We are back to Commandeer this episode. Welcome to the podcast where we discuss how to outmaneuver your opponents. I'm Faith and I'm here with Jrod and his Dudeness. Today we discuss how our competitive events went and about the news in Unlimited that has divided the community. But before we get into the fun, we ask you to smash that like button and consider becoming a subscriber to us. Jrod, how did your planetary qualifier go?
I attended two of them. One today, in fact. So just showing my dedication here, waking up at 5:30, driving 3.5 hours up to Maine to go 2 and 4 today. Pretty sick. And then drive 3.5 hours back and still record this podcast tonight. So if you think we're not dedicated, we're dedicated. So we're going to avoid that one because that was just a bunch of bad matchups for me. I was playing Palpatine Blue. And that deck is, the way it's currently constructed is to really prey on aggro and mid-range decks, not control decks. But if you play in New England, you know that everyone here likes to play control, and I should have thought about that and maybe audibled last minute, but didn't go as planned today. However, I was able to attend, luckily, the Dallas PQ with the homie Dudeness, and that one went a lot better. I went 5-2. And finished 18th out of, I think it was like 120 or so people. And the X&2 record was also snuck into the top 8. So I had a good enough record to get in top 8. My breakers just didn't align the way it needed to, unfortunately. So them's the break sometimes. And I didn't even get a top 16 going X&2. That's how crazy that was. So it was a fun event. Awesome. I was also playing Palt Blue with that as well. That meta was just a lot more aggro and mid-range, so you can kind of see where the strengths of the deck I was playing. Truthfully, if I was going to another PQ this season, I would probably not take Palpatine. As much as I love him, and I've been trying to be a stan and show everyone that he's viable, he's close, but I don't think he's there yet, unfortunately. So I'd probably lean towards like a Han double yellow, or maybe a Sabine, especially for the meta nearby me with all of the control lists. I probably would have just played Sabine and tried to steamroll all the control decks that are around. But fun season. Glad I attended. Looking forward to Jump to Lightspeed to change up all this shenanigans.
And Dudeness, what about yourself? How did your event go?
I ended the day 4-3, but I started the day 0-2. So I was basically eliminated from contention right off the rip. It was cool being able to see Jrod in person, hang out and stuff, but my first two matchups were Cad Bane Tarkin Town and a Django Tarkin Town. Probably my worst matchups with my double red Kylo list. So that was just unfortunate. I don't know, luck, I guess. I don't know.
And how did you find double red Kylo performed? Did it kind of meet what you wanted? And if not, what are you kind of looking for to make the deck a little bit better?
That's a good question. It basically performed how I thought it would perform. I just didn't want to see things that can ping my stuff off. The one game, the one guy had double ISB agents into the Daring Raid the following turn. He was playing ISB agent, showing me his Daring Raid. And then the next turn I had to just play a 2-health unit, and I just scooped on the spot, basically. So. I don't really know what I could do to make it better.
Yeah, that's fair. And myself, I played in my planetary qualifier here in Minnesota. I ended up starting off the day really rough. I did end up losing my first 3, and then I ended up just playing some games for fun, which I ended up winning. But I understand those were past the point where I was already basically eliminated. So that was a rough day for me. I did go 1-2 in both of my first 2 matches, so those were both competitive. And I was like 1 or 2 cards away from winning them. I think for me, what really hurt was I didn't have as we mentioned in the previous episode, I didn't have the practice that I had before other events. And so if I had that practice, I probably would be able to have eked out a couple different plays. I think it's always easy to blame something like the cards that you got in your card draw. At the end of the day, that's part of the game we play. And so I probably could have made a couple different decisions, which I might have got a win or 2 in those other games. I was happy with my performance overall, even though it wasn't the result I wanted. I think, again, I played some competitive games, and there was probably the worst in particular moment was I did have 2 reinforcement walkers on the board, and my opponent played a cunning to tap them both, which would have if I would have gained got that life gain, I definitely would have stabilized enough against a double yellow Han. But at the end of the day, again, I had fun, and I was excited with getting to play some competitive Star Wars Unlimited. Jrod, from your event, anything that you would have in particular done different in what you did?
So for the Dallas PQ, I would have made some changes to the list that I played, but I felt that list was definitely well positioned within the meta. And I think had I had some minor changes to the deck list, I would have been able to top 8 pretty reliably. Which I did make those changes that I thought would have helped and bring it. I did bring it to the one that happened today. However, the meta was just complete 180s from what it was a couple weeks ago. And so my misread on that just meant that I should have just had a different deck. If I could go back and pick any deck, I'd probably take Sabine just with the vast majority of control decks that I ran into. I feel pretty confident that I could have navigated the Sabine even on light testing against some of the control decks that I played against. So that's about it for changes for me. I mean, I had fun overall, had a good time. Even my crazy driving today was like 7 hours of driving plus playing, so it was a long day. Can't wait to go to bed.
Dudeness, what about yourself? Anything that you would have, any like card choices you would have made that you would have wished you had?
I mean, it wasn't really about that. I was kind of in your same boat where I didn't play a single game the previous 2 weeks leading up to the PQ. I just could not bring myself to really play this game during set 3.
Mm-hmm.
Just burn out, whatever it is. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but I just could not get myself to actually prepare for it anyway.
Yeah, well, that's fair. Now, did you also play another event? Like Jrod played an event today. You also played an event today. How did that go?
It was just a local store showdown. We only had 8 of us show up, so guaranteed top 8. Here we go. And I ended up going 2-1 with the same Kylo deck. But one of the wins was against a player that was essentially playing a slightly modified Ahsoka starter deck. So not the strongest competition, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and the match that you lost, how did that one go?
Oh, that was actually against Justin from Bucketheads. And I probably scooped both games in less than 7 minutes total.
Win fast or lose fast with that deck. And I've got a store showdown myself tomorrow that I will be playing in. As this episode will come out on Monday, I'll be playing in it on Sunday. I will be playing Yellow Obi-Wan, a deck that's pretty similar to the one that's on our channel. Something I've been liking. It's one of its main kind of gimmicks is it's trying to use, now there are 2 of them, to get out a turn 2 either Plo Koon or Ki-Adi-Mundi, and then also healing up its units. So it's trying to kind of take away some of that advantage that Tarkin Town or Quinlan Voss is trying to deal damage to your units. So the Obi-Wan's able to kind of negate that by also being able to heal your units out. It also has a built-in Sentinel, which I think is a helpful thing. So we'll see how that ends up going tomorrow in my event in Champlin at Dreamer's Vault.
I want to do a quick little shout out. One for Justin, the Bucketheads. Dudeness just mentioned him. He housed me for the weekend for the Dallas PQ, so thank you to him for being so generous and kind, allowing me to stay at his place for the weekend. That was very nice of him. And then I also want to shout out my boy Dominic, or the Yarrow Man, or the Yarrow 9th now in our Discord. I just changed his nickname to that because he's now bubbled the last 2 PQs he's played in. He's gotten 9th, which is pretty gut-wrenching. So I got to have a little fun with him. Still was a great showing for him. So I'm sure he'll get the next one, though. So
yeah, I mean, just don't become 5-2. You get 6-1 in there.
Exactly. Stop losing games.
Yeah, I mean, really, him and I finished the same distance away from top, or the same. Neither of us made the top 8. So who cares if you go 0-3 or if you go 5-2 in this?
Right. See, he went X and 2, and I went 2 and X, and guess what? We both went home sad.
There you go.
Both went home sad.
Are there any events that you guys have from now until Set 4 coming out on the pre-release is March 7th?
No, this was pretty much the last one for me, I think.
This was going to be my last one. However, today I have acquired my 2nd and 3rd copy of Endless Legion. So I'm probably going to put together the double green Palpatine list that I've been talking about for like months that I haven't made a deck tech on yet, and I'm gonna bring it to a store and I just play it and just try to beat someone with it and YOLO it.
It's like a local, like a
Like a local
weekly?
weekly event thing, not like a serious thing.
Sure. Well, you have to let us know if you end up getting the Endless Legions off.
I might try to do like a poker style where they have like your like a little like stand for your phone and it shows like your cards and like the table but doesn't show any of your opponents. I might try to do a setup like that and maybe record it if I do play that deck so we can kind of get a little view of how it's played. Maybe. No promises. Don't hold me to that, everyone. Maybe.
We got no promise, Jrod. All right. And we do have, so as these are the end of our set, for a lot of us, the end of our set 3 things, we're looking at set 4 events. We are also coming up on sectors and regional qualifiers. We will be finding out more information about those on this upcoming week from the FFG stream. So you'll have to tune in next week to hear our thoughts on how that will be. And hopefully it's for the better. We are hoping that there are going to be good updates for organized play, along with we should be as well hearing soon about what the Store Showdown promos will be for set 4. So we'll have to wait and see. We did get a stream this week about the kind of a check-in on the state of the game. And one thing that was mentioned by FFG was they were happy to see the diversity of decks. They had made a comment like, I think 50% of leaders had top 8'd a PQ. So that's really encouraging signs to see. Some people were wondering if they would announce maybe a suspension of Han or of Sabine. I think the more Han people were worried about, or the tech DJ interaction. They didn't mention anything like that. They assumed that their numbers were pretty fair on those. They just said they'd keep an eye on the Han tech, the tech and DJ with Han interaction. What were your guys' thoughts on those ideas to not at least having any mention so far of suspensions?
As a person who really despises playing against the Han DJ combo, because it's very unfun and mostly interactive, especially when they can go turn 1 Bodhi, turn 2 tech, turn 3 DJ. Like that line of play is very unfun because even if you have an answer in your hand, unless it's a unit, it can't deal with it right away, and you can almost instantly lose the game right off the rip from that. So to me, I don't think it was necessary that they're kind of playing it slow with like nerfs and bans. Like they seem to be waiting for like the full PQ season to end and then looking at things. And it's tough right now too, I think, for them because I believe that they think that set 4 is going to drastically change how everything works. And I haven't seen a ton yet that's like, oh wow, but I will say like all the cards are like, oh wow, this one seems better than like some of the other commons that we've seen in the past. So I can see that a lot of things are being pushed a little bit more in this set. So we'll see what happens when we really start getting some bangers because we're only at like 30-something% of the cards spoiled. So most of the set's not even spoiled yet. So I think that they're like trying to be conservative because of that rather than just be like, oh, everyone's mad, here you go. But I'm in the boat with like something has to get done with DJ and Han, just because like it's just unfun to play against, right? Like it's kind of the same reason that Boba Fett got suspended. Where like they were like, yeah, he's doing well, like very well, but people think he's beatable, but everyone's just like not having fun playing the game because of him right now, and so we're going to suspend him, you know. And looking back, and even though I was against it at the time, looking back at what it opened up now, I'm very thankful they made that choice because it truly did open things up and make it significantly more fun to play with stuff. Like we wouldn't see Django right now, we wouldn't see a bunch of decks right now if Boba was still around. So, yeah, it's so I'm trusting them to make the right calls here. So I'm gonna give them some grace on this one here.
What are your thoughts, Dudeness, on the potential banning or suspension?
I mean, I'm okay if they don't ban anything, honestly, but
There's
I
the
didn't really
player.
play a lot against Yellow Han because, like I said, I really didn't play at all during the set 3 at all. So I can't really say whether or not it's fun or unfun to play against.
Let me paint you a picture real quick, dudes. Ready? You're playing Kylo Double Red. You're doing real good. They've played tech on turn 2. You're like, I don't have to worry about that guy. I'm gonna attack their base, and then they claim initiative. You're like, okay, I'm on 4 resources. I can't wait to deploy my Kylo. And then they're like, resource with Han. And you're like, let me attack your base first. That's the correct play. And then they're like, DJ you, steal your resource. And you're like, wait, I can't deploy my Kylo now. And then they're like, haha, deploy my Han, attack and kill you, and you just lose the game.
You could force choke. So I guess like my thought is there are cards that do interact. It's not as uninteractive. I found you got force choke, you've got takedown that can interact with the tech because they do need to commit with the Han resource first, which is what I kind of do like about it. Is it is telegraphed on turn. The turn 3 version is telegraphed.
So I hear you, and I will say that yes, force choke is a great card in that, but takedown is not. Because, so I guess if you can take that up before, but like I guess in my experience, I've gotten bodied almost every single time beforehand, so I didn't have takedown in my hand, because that's like the other thing too, is like the little line of play in that, and they don't always have that, so I get that. But then like the other cards that really deal with that well is like Syndicate Lackey. That's a 5 cost, so then at that point you're too far behind for the Lackey to actually matter. So it's tough. It's a weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess like it does encourage / require you to have units on board so you can deal with the tech or the DJ right away. If you can deal with the DJ right away, then it's not able to be hit. And to be fair, the biggest difficulty of the combo is really only Han. Even though other decks can tech DJ and steal a resource, it's not as punishing because then you just destroy the DJ and you get your resource back. It's with Han's ability. For those that don't know, Han 1 has the ability where he can make a card from his hand into a resource, and then at the start of his next turn, they have to discard a resource. And when they discard your resource that they stole from you, then that resource is gone. And even if you destroy DJ, it's not going to come back to you. So Han is the only leader that it really is annoying with. And I do find that fair that they could Bodhi your card away. I would say I played Han double yellow in my first match, my PQ, and I wasn't worried about it personally. I was playing a more controlling deck, so that's why. And with Krennic, even without Krennic, though, you can have the Death Star, the Death Trooper, which helps with an ECL to get rid of tech. So there's ways around it. I guess to me, it's more interactive. It's good. It's strong, but I don't know if it's broken.
I mean, as someone who was playing against it without a leader deploy, so like the resource didn't like matter a ton. The problem is that basically you're letting the Han player ramp, so like you're trying to play from like behind 2 resources. You know what I mean? I think that's the real tough part is being behind 2 resources after the turn. Like it's just, I don't know, it's brutal. It's basically game winning on the spot, and I don't know. It just seems like there is interaction, but it's limited. I don't know. It's like you have to play so different and make your deck so different just for like that one combo, and then all that stuff for that one combo is like not good into anything else. So you're basically just hoping you play that a bunch, or you're going to lose to everybody else, kind of deal.
Well, the nice thing is that I think we can look at the same. We can all look at the same stats differently. We can all look at like what's good, what's too good, what's not too good. We can all look at that differently and have different thoughts on it. At the end of the day, FFG is going to have to make a decision whether they do or do not do something about it. They seem to be wanting to use stats and metrics as their way of looking at what they're going to touch, and that's not a bad thing. To me, though, from watching their first interview at the end of January, seems like they're not going to do anything about it. I'm sure they're going to take the rest of the PQs into consideration. If we see a spike in Han double yellow using Tech and DJ, then we will probably see some kind of suspension. I guess I'm interested to see which one they suspend. If they do try to suspend or limit, or because we only have the one suspension so far. Maybe they're going to limit it. Maybe they're going to ban just one piece. I would imagine they ban DJ.
So
More tech.
I don't think you'll see a ban for this. You might see like a rules change where like it's either a rules change to Han or a rules change to tech, where it says Han can only defeat resources you own. So that way, whenever you do defeat DJ, you get the resource back that he stole, right? Or it'll be tech cannot change the smuggle cost of the printed smuggle cost. So DJ has to be 7.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. I guess those are like erratas, and I'm less I less like erratas than I do suspensions or bans.
So
We'll have to see.
I wouldn't call those erratas because it can be just a rule change, right? Like it doesn't have to be like a on the card. It's just like, oh, like yes, he does minus tech does like let you smuggle cards from your resource row for +2, but they whatever their smuggle cost is, if they already have one, it stays the same. Like that would just be like a rules change. Like if a card has smuggle, that's what it costs to smuggle it. Period. It cannot be changed. So that way, tech when he says that, it would just be he could only make like non-smuggleable cards smuggleable, and the other smuggle cards are just as normal. You know, does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying. I don't. Yeah, I don't know if that's what I prefer. And that's okay. Again, I think it's okay that we have different things. I think for me, the biggest thing is the way both cards are worded. Like with tech, it's each friendly resource gains smuggle. And so it's to me that seems a lot like when a unit has restore 2 and it gains restore 1. It's seeming like there's restore 2 written on both of them. And that's why you can add restore 2 plus restore 1, because then it's becomes restore 3.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike something like grit, which to me seems to read in a way that even if you had multiple sources, you wouldn't get the effect twice. So I like the way they phrased their rulings in general. But I guess in the same way, you could say that it doesn't have a number beside it. So we'll have to see what they do. And that's. I don't think anything should be done personally. I think there's ways to interact with it, but we'll have to wait and see what FFG does. And as we're going to see what FFG is going to do in the future, we do know that they have talked about rotation. And this is something that has been kind of dividing the community. Jrod, do you want to talk a little bit about what FFG talked about for rotation?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically rotation is when a set or a block, and I'm talking about a block, it would be like a full year of sets. So in this case, it's 3 sets. So like the year set, this for year 1 was Spark, Shadows, Twilight, and then the block for year 2 is going to be Jump to Lightspeed, and then the other 2 last ones,
Legends of
the Force and Power of whatever it is.
Secrets of Power.
Secrets of Power, thank you. So those are the 2 blocks that we know of currently. And so what FFG is going to do for their rotation to keep the game fresh and keep the game fun is that as soon as the 3rd block were to enter that first set in that first year, the first block, so in this instance would be Bark, Shadows, and Twilight, all 3 of those sets would rotate out and no longer be legal for the Premier format. And I specify Premier because Twin Suns is an eternal format, meaning you can use any card, no matter what, for the entirety of the game in that mode, in that game friend area. You can use any card, always legal there. And when this happens, FFG will be announcing and supporting, they were very clear to say that, an eternal format, which will be more like Premier than Twin Sun, so you'll have 1 leader in your deck, and you'll be able to play any card you want. I would imagine there's no actual rules out for that, so that's just my speculation there on that part. But you'll be able to play basically all 3 blocks that would be out. So you'll be able to play with 3, 6, 7 sets for that when it first launches, and it would keep adding on to that as well. So with rotation here, it's just for a block. So I know some people aren't a fan of it because they're like, oh, I've invested in all these cards and they're going to be worthless. And I hear you, but as a Magic player, and I'm not saying these cards are going to be like Magic cards were in the first sets that were like super expensive. However, these cards will still hold value. People will still want them in the future. And if the Eternal format actually becomes a bigger, prominent thing in FFG, and they already said they were supporting it, which tells me that they will likely have PQs or store showdowns or whatever, like that will be run with the Eternal format. Again, nothing confirmed here, just my speculation, since they said that they would be supporting it, which tells me they plan to run events with that in mind. So just something to keep in mind there, that those cards aren't worthless. Don't rip them up. Don't throw them away. Hold on to those. They're still going to hold value. People will still want them. So take a chill pill on that. But yeah, I mean, I think rotation is really good for the game. It helps with being able to test cards, because when you add more cards, you're adding more variables, and you can't test every variable before it gets released. There just isn't enough manpower on the planet really to do that. So it creates an easier balancing system for the internal team to make sure that we get cards that are fun and exciting to play with, but also not super overpowered. And what it also will do is keep the game fresh. So you're not seeing Sabine, Boba Fett, all these big, strong leaders from the beginning of the game just continuing to do well the whole time. And like none of these new leaders are able to beat them out because those are just so powerful on themselves, within themselves. You know what I mean? So it changes the game. It changes all the dynamics, and it keeps things fresh. In my opinion.
So, Dudeness, you've played other games which have had rotation. What are your thoughts on rotations?
I mean, rotation was always going to happen because games that don't have rotation are just not good. Like just look at Yu-Gi-Oh, for example. Like, goodness gracious, like without rotation, you have to just power creep the heck out of everything to make it worthwhile to buy the new cards. Rotation is an anti-power creep mechanic. And they're going to reprint some of the cards too from these first 3 sets in either these next 3 sets, 4 through 6, or even just in set 7 itself. So just because there is a rotation doesn't necessarily mean that the cards you like are going to go away, because they can be reprinted, and that is a great way to actually fight power creep again, because you don't need to power creep a card by giving you a more powerful version. If you can just reprint it and keep that same version of the card in the Premier Block legal format or whatever.
Yep.
So, Dudeness, what happens if I have a resupply from Spark of Rebellion, and in set 7 they reprint a resupply as well? When that would rotate out Twilight Republic, Shadows of the Galaxy, or Spark of Rebellion.
Yeah, then it won't matter what set the card you're playing is from, so long as it's currently Premier legal. You can use any version of that card. So, like I said, if they end up reprinting any of your favorite cards from set 1 in these next 4 sets, then you can still play with them for the next 2 years or whatever.
Yeah, I think, and I think as people have commented on before. First off, this is again a controversial subject. All 3 of us are in agreement that we are for rotation, because if there's not a quote unquote hard rotation, like in this game's having, where those sets are just rotated out and you cannot play with those cards, there is a quote unquote soft rotation, and that is, as Dudeness had mentioned, power creep. Because as Dudeness correctly stated, the company, you gotta remember, as much as we might enjoy playing this game, at the end of the day, it is a business for FFG. They want to sell packs, and so they're going to have to produce better cards if they don't have rotation. You have to keep producing slightly better cards to make it worthwhile to buy the packs. And that's where you get this, again, quote unquote, soft rotation. Anyone that plays Yu-Gi-Oh! Currently, you will see there might be some very, very, very strong magic and spell cards and trap cards, but generally monsters that were printed 10 years ago are either stupid good and banned, or they are just printed. There's just printed better versions of them. So it's hard to maintain power level without a rotation. It's one of the reasons I am for rotation as well. I can appreciate someone saying, hey, I bought these cards, now they have no worth, now they're not usable. And to that, my response would be the fact that they would be if there wasn't another format that you could play them in, which would be this eternal format that Jrod had mentioned. So I'm looking forward to that. I do hope that they do learn from some of the other card games that we have, in particular Magic the Gathering, which I was a big fan of their modern format. However, which is a format that started at a certain point, and they could print cards into standard and then they go into modern. What I found the problem is they made sets that were direct to modern, and that also kind of created a rotation within that format, because then there's these cards that are just super, super good in that format. I hope that they keep their focus on Premier and making that a fun, relatively balanced experience. And then as those cards rotate into an extended format, we can have a natural power level within the extended format.
Yeah, and truthfully, I'm going to piggyback a little bit on your point there, Faith, about people who are sad about, oh, I spent all this money on these cards. If they didn't have a rotation, there's a higher chance that those cards would be worthless faster because of power creep than what you're going to get from those cards with an extended format or an eternal format, whatever they decide to name that. Because with the eternal format, especially in the beginning, you're going to have multiple years to use your Vaders and Lukes that are probably always going to be good enough to be in there, right? So you investing in those cards is not a bad thing. Same thing with like Millennium Falcon or Cad Bane or Poe Dameron or Wrecker. Like the staple cards that are good are probably going to be good in the eternal format for a decent amount of time. Whereas if they didn't have that and they were just printing better versions of cards, like you'd probably have like maybe like a year or two of those cards, and then they'd be like, oh, that card's not even good anymore because these cards are just way better. So like that card's now like 10 cents,
Yeah. I do want to say one point that I am a little disappointed in myself. I like rotation overall. I am personally a bigger fan of a one set in, one set out than whole block rotations. I know Destiny did block rotations, and one of my biggest problems from my experience playing other card games is that when the first rotation happens, you only have 4 sets available. So when they print set 7, again, Spark Rebellion, Shadows of the Galaxy, and Twilight of the Republic will all rotate out. And so we're only going to have 4 usable sets: Jump to Lightspeed, Legend of the Force, Secrets of Power, and set 7. And from my past experience, that was just not enough sets for me to really get into deck building as much or to enjoy decking as much. I like having more options to pull from. I also think it kind of creates a more dynamic environment because then it's like, okay, I'm the deck builder inside of me. Well, now that this set's gone, I've got to now reinvent it in this way. Or, okay, this set's in and that set's out. So now I'm always having to upgrade my deck. Where in the block rotations, it's like set 4, when the rotation A comes in, which would be those 4 sets, I kind of have a deck and then just keep expanding on it and building on it and not need to tinker it as much. So that's just my personal thoughts. I do also have a little bit of a concern with like people bought Twilight of the Republic not knowing when the rotation would be or how it would look like. And so to me, they didn't know that they would only have 16 months of it in the standard format. Going forward, people will know that so they can make a more educated choice. But it just feels a little bad for people that maybe bought a lot of Twilight not knowing how long it would be valid for.
As someone who bought a lot of Twilight, I'm not worried about it personally.
Yeah.
Listen, all of this is caveated to say that I'm happy about their choices so far, is assuming that they truly and holistically fully support this extended format and force it into competitive play. Like it needs to be a required event, whether it's like you have to win, like not everyone, but like there are some events that are eternal formats and not just Premier. Like if they only run Premier to get to Worlds, then the eternal format will die and it will not be worth anything. And then yes, your cards will be worthless and rotation will be what everyone despises. If the eternal format is good and people play it and like it's played competitively, the cards will still be worth money. So that's the important part there. Also, to go back to your 1 in 1 out thing, I think it would be more fun that way for the players. I just think it's a lot more work for the design team and the development team to test that. I would imagine that's probably the main reason why they kiboshed that. I'm sure it was on the table for them, but I think that was probably just too much.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do want to say that what this does allow for us now, though, is we could actually have a trios event. And for those that are unfamiliar with trios, that's like where you would come with a team of 3 and you would have each person play a different kind of format. So my thought for this is you could have on your team one player who has a eternal format, their extended format, one person who's got a premier deck, and one person who's got like a sealed deck. And so your teams of 3 would play against each other. As an example, it could be like Outmaneuver versus Bucketheads, and each of us would play a different format. Probably have Dudeness as our sealed player. Jrod would play our premier deck, and maybe I would play the extended deck. And then Buckethead would also have one of each of those players, and we would all play. Every team would kind of play off in a regular Swiss format. That way, it creates like a best of 3 feel with everyone only playing best of 1 games. I think that'd be kind of an interesting thing that I would love to see them do as like not every event, but like have like one event like that would be, I think, really fun per year.
I would love to do it like a Team Worlds thing. That would be sick.
Yeah, again, this isn't like a new thing that no other card game's doing. Other card games do have these. I remember first with Magic, with I think Standard, Modern, and Legacy, and I know Yu-Gi-Oh does it as well. They have some kind of trios events. Hot mess card game. Sorry for anyone that likes to play Yu-Gi-Oh, but so I'm really excited for something like that to have a more team aspect and see varieties of different ways to play the game.
Team event does sound fun, but back to your previous point, the Eternal format will be as good as it's supported to be, right? Like,
yeah.
If there's no actual support from the game or for that format from FFG, then nobody is going to play it, because why would you? So the success of the Eternal format is strictly on FFG.
And I think to Jrod's point, I want to give FFG as much props and as much space to cook because they've earned that, I think, with the communication they provided for us. They have said so far that all of their planetaries, regional sectors are all going to be premier format. They did say they're open to that being changed in the future. I hope they would. That's again, someone who played Magic, I love that they had limited like big events, and they had like some of their Pro Tour events were limited format. Some of them were modern format. Some of them were standard format. I like that they have those big events are different formats. So that way you could support the extended one. It doesn't have to be the extended one all the time. I could say if you have like 15 large events, if there's one, even just one extended format in the year and one limited format, and the rest of them could all be standard or premier, I think that'd be a fun way to experience those at the very highest level, those different formats. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today as we looked at how we did in Planetary Qualifier and as we look at what's coming up to the game with rotation. We want to thank you guys for listening, and we hope you have a great day. We'll see you next time on Outmaneuver.
Cheers, y'all.